Hey everyone! So there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube explaining the current state of the milsurp community and what the prices are. Well, I wanted to go ahead and share some of the milsurps that I've acquired over the last 12 months and what I paid for them. More as an interesting data point than arguing, what those prices ought to be. Now, I know I'm not the only one to do this. There are dozens and dozens of videos out there of people explaining, showing what milsurps they've gotten, and I know there are some channels that do this every year, right? And they've been doing this for 8 years. And what I thought was particularly interesting about that was you can go back 8 years and see what people were paying for rifles. And they'll do that every year. So for example, someone will say, I bought a Mosin Nagant 5 years ago for $150. You'll watch the same person explain that in 2020 or 2019, they paid $350 for that same model in a relatively similar condition. And I think that is really fascinating. And I think this information, even if someone's watching this video in the future, can look at this and see how inflation works in the milsurp community and maybe even see if prices have gone down, which I doubt they will. Either way, I figured it'd be a good idea to kind of contribute to that conversation and show a little bit about some of the milsurps and what guns are going for in what condition. Now, I don't consider myself an expert by any means in milsurps. For me, it's more of a hobby, right? There are people that spend hours and hours and hours going to auctions, going to gun shops, and they really make it about their life. Me, I have a little bit of extra income that I'll go and spend on military surplus items because I find military history really interesting, especially when it comes to the firearms aspect of military history. So again, when I'm looking at prices, I've probably overpaid for guns, and I've definitely underpaid for some guns too. This does not reflect what the actual market price is, but that variable is rather like what the average gun buyer is, right? They're not experts. They're probably relatively educated on milsurps in general, but they may not understand like every model of the 1873 trapdoor, right? They're going to go out and buy a gun, but they know enough about it to purchase it, but maybe not enough about it to go differentiate between a bunch of models. So like, for example, the Mauser family is massive. You may see a Mauser for $240 on the shelf without really knowing a whole lot about it, other than the fact that Mausers are good rifles, and you can check the bore, check the action, make sure the firing pin is in place, and you buy it and figure, well, I'll go look at the marks later, right? Again, I'm sort of in this category where I know enough about a family to inspect the gun and buy it and know when I'm not overpaying for it, right? So let's jump into it. Okay, so at the bottom of the list, we have a model 1912 Chilean Mauser. This was manufactured by Steyr. I bought this for about $210. It is in pretty rough shape. I mean, the bore is actually really nice, and I think when I clean it up, it's going to make a really good shooter. And all the major components work. Safety, the bolt, firing pin, and the inside of it looks pretty good. However, when I bought it, there were some missing parts. So the magazine spring or the follower spring was gone. There is a crack right here. I'm going to need to get that fixed before I actually take it out and shoot it. And then there's also some major pitting. Get that to focus. There's major pitting along here. The top handguard is missing completely, and because this is a short model, I have not been able to find it anywhere, and I've been keeping my eye out, but there are some cosmetic things that don't look pretty on it, but for the most part, the bore actually looks pretty decent. So once it's cleaned up, I get this crack fixed, I think it's actually going to make a decent shooter. And it's in 7mm Mauser, which isn't the most readily available round, but it's not impossible to find, right? It's just going to be, I don't know, I think it's $1 a round. Either way, this was actually my first South American Mauser, so I'm pretty excited to take it out. Again, not the cleanest looking rifle, but I also didn't pay an egregious amount for it. Well, the next rifle I got, and kind of going along with, picked up a number of Mausers this past 12 months, but this is a model 1938 Turkish Mauser. I've never shot this. This is an 8mm. I paid $275 for this in an online auction on gunbroker.com. It's actually my first auction I've ever participated in online. Kind of interesting, and I was the only bidder. And the starting bid was at $275, and so no one competed against me, so I think I did okay, though I'm not sure that the Turkish Mausers from some other online listings really go for much more than $275, so I think I pretty much broke even. I don't think there was any special deal. Either way, it's 1942 dated in the Ankara arsenal. The KCAL, I guess, is the short name for it. Turkish Mauser. It is in very fine condition. I don't see any pitting on the metal whatsoever. The bore is very clean. You know, there are some people that say they really like the Turkish Mausers. Now, a lot of the Turkish Mausers, like the Ottoman World War I dated Mausers, which I would like to get my hands on at some point, those were actually German made. This was, I believe, the first Turkish Mauser that was made by the Turkish government. I think a lot of the German-made Turkish Mausers that went to the Ottoman Empire in the First World War were modified after the war to accept 8mm cartridges. I think they were chambered for 7mm. Not entirely sure about that, but this one was chambered for 8mm, and was, I believe, like I was saying, the first Turkish-made domestic Mauser. And I don't, because Turkey didn't get involved in World War II, again, this is 1942 dated, they probably just came out for rifle practice and then were put right back into storage afterwards. So it is in very, very good condition. Cosmetically, there's really not a whole lot missing. Everything's there from what I understand. The safety mechanism works. Oh, let me, that. And it kind of has a cool feel. It's very similar to the pictures of the model 1903 Turkish Mausers. I think the rear sight leaf is a little bit different on these than they were in the World War I variants. But overall, it looks like a pretty cool gun, and I'm pretty excited to shoot it. Like I said, I'm kind of new to the Mauser family, and some of these more non-European Mausers are kind of cool. So that is number 2. All right, so number 3 on the list is a Mauser. This is a Yugo model M48A. These, I think, are pretty common Mausers in the United States. Now, I paid about $375, which I think, looking back, is probably $50 or $75 more than the market price. This one is in really good condition. I think they all are relatively in good condition because they pretty much weren't used. And it is the very, it's the closest thing you can get to a K98 without actually getting a K98. And this one I have shot. So it's a really nice rifle, pretty accurate. I don't have any complaints about it, and it basically has the same weight and feel as a German K98, and a lot of these were made with German machinery after World War II, obviously for Yugoslavia, but it looks like there's a little bit of aftermarket stuff. I mean, this doesn't match this. Someone put this really ugly gloss over the stock. They jeweled the bolt. But other than that, it's a good specimen of a Mauser Yugo Model 48. Okay, number 4, we're rolling along with the Mausers again. This is a DWM Chilean Model 1895. This also has an excellent bore. I bought this along with that Model 1912. I paid about $375, so roughly the same cost as the Yugo Mauser. It's got all matching serial numbers. Cosmetically, there's some blemishes on it, but it's not a huge problem. It's got the Chilean crest on it right here. The only thing, the sight leaf was missing. And then, you know, it has a lot of cosmetic similarities to the Turkish Model 1938 Mauser. The only thing that's preventing me from shooting this right now, I guess it's not really preventing me, but there's a crack in the buttstock right here. Not a big deal, but it's kind of one of those things that's been bothering me that I want to get fixed first. But the bore is in excellent condition, and this is 7mm rather than 8mm Mauser, which isn't really a problem. Again, it's just going to be one of those things where you have a lot of different Mausers that were either chambered in 7mm or 8mm, depending on what the export market wanted. So, you know, the Chilean Mausers were, and you know, they were manufactured in Germany, but they were, well, I guess the Steyrs were manufactured in Austria. But this, the Model 1895 was an export Mauser for Chile. And I believe some of these too also went to South Africa, or a batch of them were diverted to South Africa on their way to Chile in the, I guess, the First or Second Boer War. But either way, I think these are known for being quite reliable rifles, and I am very, very excited to shoot this. And it's in very, very good condition, almost no pitting, but a pretty good specimen of an 1895 with just a few cosmetic blemishes. All right, the next one we have for you is the French Model 1892 in 8mm Lebel. This was sort of an impulse purchase. I really like the aesthetic of it. This one is 1901 dated, and it's a double action French cavalry or officers revolver. I usually am not really into Military sidearms, but this caught my eye at a local antique shop, and it is a beautiful piece. Just the way the cylinder moves, it's gorgeous. It has you know, the French lettering on it, and the craftsmanship is pretty decent in these. The one interesting thing about this, sorry, the price I paid for this was about $525, which I think was kind of on par for the market price of these. I think in a couple years I can probably get a little bit more out of this if I wanted to sell it, considering French firearms are kind of on the up and up, especially with Ian McCullum's show and his kind of obsession with French stuff. The French did make beautiful weapons, and they had cool names for them too. So the interesting thing about this one is the revolver comes out on the right side, which is not really typical for a revolver, but the idea in mind, I believe, was that it was supposed to, if you were on a horse, you were supposed to hold, these were invented in the time of officers were on horseback, and you were going to be holding the reins and the rifle with your left hand, and you'd be reloading with your right hand while you're on horseback. So that's kind of a cool little anecdote. I may be wrong on that, but that's kind of the popular story I've heard. And it's kind of a small round. It's not that big, 8mm Lebel. It's a tiny, very tiny round, but it's Saint Etienne, which was the main French government arsenal. I think there were a couple more. Toul. I have a Lebel made at Toul, which I'll show you guys here in a few minutes. But it's just kind of a cool piece, and I don't know what about, you know, I don't know why, but this is a really cool looking revolver. I may get rid of it at some point, but either way, it is the French Model 1892. Okay, well, this next rifle isn't a Mauser. As you can see, it's a Mosin Nagant. This is not the M9130. This is the original M91. This is a U.S. Westinghouse Mosin Nagant with Finnish marks on it, the New England Westinghouse. So this was actually an American-made Mosin Nagant, 1915, which was contracted by the Russian Imperial government. and these were sent over. And then there was a huge revolution in Russia, obviously, and then these things ended up there. It has the imperial mark, the Russian imperial marks on it, but it also has the Russian marks on it, or sorry, the Finnish marks on it, which means at some point it ended up in Finnish hands, which is kind of cool, and then back to the United States where it was created. And there is a bit of a distinct look between the M90 or the M90-130s and just the regular M91s. Kind of building out my World War I collection right now, so that's why I acquired this piece, and it's kind of cool. Nothing wrong with another Mosin in the collection. Definitely has a different rear sight than the M90-130s, which is the World War II configuration, and it has a really nice stock on it. I just like the finish and the way it looks. It's not as rough as the World War II Soviet-made ones, which I don't think had as high standards. So I paid roughly $675 for this gun. I don't know if that's too high. Of course, these guns don't get any, they don't make them anymore, right? So you're not going to be seeing a ton of these. I don't know if this one was a recent bring back, or if there's any more in Finland or the Eastern Bloc that will be coming back to the United States. But as more people acquire them, it's a good investment, at least. That's the way I see it. And it's cool. I shot this a couple weekends ago, and it's fairly accurate, and the bore's in pretty good shape for a gun manufactured well over 105 years ago. So anyway, that's the Mosin Nagant. Okay, so this is a pretty obvious gun, the #1 Mark III short magazine Lanfield. The iconic British World War I, World War II rifle. Beautiful gun. This is 1916 dated, so World War I configuration. It doesn't have the magazine cutoff on it. It doesn't have the pop-up sights, which you would have seen, I guess, in the 1916 and before, or the 1914 and before. I'm not entirely sure when they cut that out. I believe for saving material metal for the war effort, but I paid about $700 for this, which admittedly is a little bit much for a Lanfield, but this one has no problems whatsoever. I mean, it's cosmetically in great condition. The bore is excellent. It's dead on accurate. The bolt is just clean. I mean, it has the fresh feel, the quick, the famous short magazine Lanfield quick action with the bolt. I had a little bit of a problem with the safety early on, but fixed that. So again, these guns are not losing any value. They're only going up. Iconic World War I bolt action rifle. Highly revered by the British and everyone else, famous for the Mad Minute. Of course, the Mausers, I think, are a little bit more accurate than these, but again, they are excellent rifles. They have a lot of history to them, and I just love them. So if I can pick up more in the future, I probably will, but it's a 1916 dated short magazine Lanfield. Okay, so I'm going to roll with the Great War rifles, which is kind of the collection I'm working on, and kind of the theme right now is World War I rifles and Mausers, but this is the Lebel Model 1886. This was famous for being the first gun to have ammunition in smokeless powder. That's kind of what it's famous for, and this with the Berthier was the main French rifle during World War I, saw action in various colonial conflicts. Regardless, has a ton of history. I paid $800 for this rifle. It's kind of hard to pinpoint what was a good price for this. I've seen these go for as low as like $600 in the past. This one, the ones that I've seen that go for like $600 are not in good as condition. Now this one cosmetically is pretty decent. I fired it a number of times. The magazine works fine, the tube magazine. I've had I've shot labels before that have the spring is either broken or not all the ammunition will feed in the 2 magazine, and sometimes the elevator doesn't work. Everything works in this one, so it's a pretty nice one. This is not Saint Etienne though. This is manufactured in Toul, which was another factory. This is in 1888 manufactured. This is so 2 years after they were manufacturing the labels, and it's got the M93, which was the ammunition upgrade mark. It is not N mark though, for the ammunition upgrade in the 1930s, but you can still shoot modern ammo out of it, which isn't an issue. The only cosmetic things that were kind of weird about this gun is it's missing the front sight, which I need to get replaced, the stacking swivel right here, and then the rear sight ladder is bent a little bit, but all fixable things, all replaceable things. Overall, iconic weapon. Again, the French weapons are going up in price right now, and I imagine within a couple years you're going to be paying more than $1,000 for a label. So I probably won't get my hands on another one, and figured it was a good time to add it to the collection. Okay, our second to last gun is the iconic Model 1903 Springfield. This is chambered in 30-06. This was, along with the P-17, the main battle rifle used by the United States Armed Forces in the First World War. This one I paid about $895 for this, so almost $900 for this rifle. This is in the original configuration. It's World War II rebarreled. The bore in this is absolutely excellent. There is no pitting on this, and it's all matching serial numbers. There's someone put, again, an ugly gloss on the stock, which I don't particularly like, but other than that, it is in fine condition. Everything works on it. I've shot it multiple times. It is 1918 dated, so it's like right above where the low serial number would be, which is still hotly debated within the gun community, but that I believe was more of a problem with ammunition than the actual receiver itself and how it was manufactured. But you know, iconic gun, iconic look, accurate, very accurate rifles, and I just, you know, World War I collection again, kind of have to have it. I'm really not sure what this is, but oh, it was the last U.S. rifle also to have the magazine cut off, which is interesting. This was on the Craig as well, but, you know, don't really need it in an M1 Garand at all. But anyway, this is the Model 1903 Springfield. Awesome looking gun, great rifle, very accurate, but a little pricey. And I, you know, took a bit of a gamble, not really knowing a whole lot about it. Spending this much money on a gun, but it's seemed to work really well for me, and I love the looks of these 1903s. Okay, the last gun we're going to be looking at, and this is my most recent purchase about a month ago, is the Gewehr 98. And I made a video about this. This is the one I purchased from Royal Tiger Imports. It's a bit of a Frankenstein gun. I admittedly paid $900 for this rifle, not knowing what I'm going to get because it was picked off a stack. Again, the bore is pretty trashed on it. None of the parts are matching. The receiver is like a 1911 Danzig Arsenal. Everything is German Imperial marks. It's just none of it matches. So I paid a little bit higher on the price, and I definitely got burned, not knowing what I was getting into with one of these random pick Mauser, or, you know, random pick Royal Tiger Import Century Arms sort of deals. But anyway, it's got, you know, the iconic German roller coaster front sights on it. But, you know, sort of the this was the main World War I bolt action rifle that the Germans would have been using. Cool history. I have not shot this yet. It needs to be inspected by a gunsmith first in order for me to feel more comfortable. You you know, everything works on it though, and cosmetically it looks pretty decent. So I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't keyhole when I fire it. But this was the last Milsurp I've got, and probably the last one I'll buy for 2020. But anyway, those are just what did I have? 11, 12 guns that I bought over the last 12, 13 months. And I just wanted to share those with you. And, you know, as Milsurps get more expensive, it'll be interesting to see what these guns will be like in a decade from now. Are they all going to be quite literally collector's items? And, you know, I started collecting Milsurps when I was 18 with my M1 Garand. Admittedly a pretty expensive rifle for someone at 18, but, you know, something that really got me into the hobby, really sparked my interest, really got me into reading and studying everything about these guns. So, you know, I'm hoping that in the future, the next generation will be able to still collect these military rifles at a somewhat affordable price. But either way, thanks for watching, guys. And if you have any questions, or I'd love to hear what you guys are paying for similar guns right now, if you've been doing that in the last year. But anyway, drop me a comment in the comment section, or give it a thumbs up.